It's Monday. Not sure how you did it, but you actually survived an entire 2 days without hearing from Tom. Good job to you. And once again, good luck.
Welcome back to Ocala Talk on July 5th, day after Independence Day celebrated in this country 245 years ago, yesterday. 56 men in a hot, boarded up, windows boarded up, small room. And if you've ever been to the Independence Hall, you know how small it is. A small room in downtown Philadelphia in powdered wigs, wool coats, stocking legs with wool pants over the stocking legs. Had to be excruciatingly hot. The temperature around that time was about 96, 97 degrees at that time in July. Representing Delaware was George Reed, Caesar Rodney, and Thomas McKeon. Representing Pennsylvania were George Clymer, Benjamin Franklin, Robert Morris, John Martin, Benjamin Rush, George Ross, James Smith, James Wilson, and George Taylor. Representing the colony of Massachusetts was John Adams, Sam Adams, John Hancock, Robert Treat Payne, and Eldridge Gary. Representing the colony of New Hampshire was Josiah Bartlett. Yeah, that's where they got the name for West Wing, was from one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. William Whipple and Matthew Thornton. Rhode Island was represented by Stephen Hopkins and William Ellery. New York was represented by Lewis Morris, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis, and William Floyd. Virginia was represented by Richard Henry Lee, Francis Lightfoot Lee, Carter Braxton, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Jefferson, George Wythe, and Thomas Nelson Jr. North Carolina was represented by William Hopper, John Penn, and Joseph Hughes. South Carolina was represented by Edward Rutledge, Arthur Middleton, Thomas Lynch Jr., and Thomas Hayward Jr., and then, of course, the colony of Georgia, Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, and George Walton were the representatives. Those 56 men put their names to a document that really made them traitors to the crown of England. If they had not been successful, if the colonists had not been successful in the Revolutionary War, they would have been hung as traitors. Now, what paved the way to this Declaration of Independence? Well, you all heard the tone, no taxation without representation. And yes, that was the broad view of what happened. The Stamp Act was passed in 1765, excuse me, I'm dyslexic there. That was, and it wasn't, everybody thinks the Stamp Act was just one thing. It wasn't. It was a set of British laws that just taxed everything, basically, because Britain was paying for a war against France. And the colonies needed to pay their fair share according to the crown. But the colonies didn't have any say in how much taxes they paid. Parliament made that decision without the colonists having any say in it. And there was a fateful meeting with the governor of Massachusetts, the Massachusetts colony, and John Hancock over controlling Samuel Adams. Samuel Adams was appointed by the governor of Massachusetts to become a tax collector. Sam Adams ended up being more like a Robin Hood than he was an actual tax collector. He would let people slide on their taxes. He would give other people that needed the money instead of turning it over to the crown. So a warrant was issued for Samuel Adams' arrest. He was, of course, the people of the community of Boston protected him, and so the British could never, the English regulars could never find him to arrest him on the governor's warrant. So the governor calls in John Hancock and says, John, I've known your dad forever. I cut him some slack. You have the same issue, because John Hancock was a merchant. He goes, look, you pay me a tribute, and I look the other way on your taxes. You need to figure out how to deal with this Samuel Adams issue. John Hancock says, why is it my problem? He said, because any problem that's my problem as governor is your problem, or you'll start paying taxes. So John Hancock, people think he's this really above board guy. He originally entered into an agreement with the British governor to control Sam Adams and his rowdy bunch that were, fighting in the streets and everything and not really liking the English being there. So John Hancock made an agreement. He went to Sam Adams and said, hey, I'll pay off all the debt you owe, because they said Sam owed the debt, being that he didn't collect it properly. I'll pay all the debt you owe. I'll make this right with the crown. You call off the mobs that are in the street fighting and beating people all the time. Samuel Adams said, okay, I'll do that. John Hancock returns to the governor of Massachusetts and says, I've taken care of the problem. Was Samuel Adams eliminated? No, I made an agreement with him. And he goes, hold on. You mean he breaks the law, he doesn't give duties to the king, he does all these things that are against the law of the crown, and you make a deal with him and reward him with his freedom? John Hancock says, yeah, but I took care of your problem. He leaves. The governor is so incensed that he sends a letter off to Parliament that to send more troops, that it's unruly, and he wants a crackdown on people who aren't paying proper taxes. The first person they crack down on? John Hancock, because the governor was so angry at him for not dealing with the Samuel Adams way, issue the way he wanted it dealt with. So he starts raiding the ships of John Hancock, and actually it was Madeira wine, folks, that really was one of the main cogs in, because John Hancock was not paying tribute for the Madeira wine he was bringing in. Now all of a sudden he was required to. The taxes were more than the money he would make. So he entered into an agreement with Sam Adams to get Sam Adams and his group to start basically being, blockade runners or smugglers and get his wine in for it. So John Hancock originally was not on board with Sam Adams and the Founding Forefathers. It wasn't until the Crown turned their back on him and started treating him the same way they were treating the other people in Boston that he turned into a revolutionary. It's not all cakes and crumpets, folks. But the Tax Act of 1765 started the way towards revolution. Then there was that fateful day in Boston where some scared regulars were surrounded by an angry mob. Nobody knows what triggered it. It's not real clear in history. The mob says that the regulars started. The regulars said the mob started. But anyway, the Boston Massacre happens in 1770. Crispus Attucks is the first patriot to die. An African-American man was the first to die in the fight for freedom. That happened in 1770. And once that happened, there were a lot of people that saw the only way to answer this was to get rid of English tyranny in the colonies. We got a long way to go, folks, into the Declaration of Independence. We'll do that next. You're listening to 1370 AM 96.
Broadcasting from
This is WOCA, The Source.
Broadcasting from the Ocala International Airport, this is WOCA AM, W242CA FM, Ocala, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
It's time for Farm and Ranch headlines on the Southeast.
USA Radio News with Lance Pride.
Rescuers were given the go-ahead to resume the search for victims of the Surfside, Florida building collapse after the remaining portion of the building was pulled down in a controlled demolition Sunday night. Officials say the demolition went exactly as planned, about 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Pope Francis went to a Rome hospital on Sunday for scheduled surgery of his large intestine. The news came a few hours after Francis greeted the public in St. Peter's Square and told them he would go to Hungary and Slovakia in September. Officials in Cuba evacuated 180